Redditors did as Redditors do, and they uncovered a podcast that came out in April where Ed O'Brien was being interviewed on the lineup with Sean Keaveney. And in it, yeah, Ed O'Brien's being interviewed. Of course, a member of Radiohead, storied band. The show's called Audioface, figure it out. But
and we reviewed EOB's album and stuff.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about Radiohead. We
record.
talked about The Smile this year even, and like that project. And we've talked about how like our Radiohead episode had to be a two-parter because part one was just the band itself, and then part two was all of the solo projects. The I joke about it and we call it the Radiohead cinematic universe, so to speak, because there's all these other like solo projects that kind of feature Tom York here or there, or like Johnny Greenwood has been scoring like 1 to 2 films a year, like. It's just mad expansive. Like we said, Ed O'Brien has done solo projects that we've now reviewed as well. We've seen production work from Radiohead members on different albums. It's all over the place. There's Our Word Friend with Johnny Greenwood, Tom York, and Doom. Like it spans everywhere. But this phenomenal project, this like group of guys, may be coming to an end, it seems. And so Ed O'Brien spoke on this podcast and said, basically, there is no Radiohead at the moment, and confirmed the band are on a full hiatus. He said that when asked whether the band would reunite, he said, it might do, but the other thing is it might not, and does that matter? He said, quote, Radiohead would never be one of those bands that gets together for the big payday. We could do something in a couple years, we might not, but I think it has to be, has to be 5 people going, I really want to do this again with you. And I think at the moment, because we've done it so long, we're all reaching out with new projects and wanting to have different experiences, and that should be allowed and it should be encouraged, end quote. So I think all of that there would probably also be my analysis to the thought. Like you were even saying with our commentary on A Moon-Shaped Pool that it's probably their last record. Maybe they have one more in them, but like they're getting up there in age. They're all interested in doing other solo projects. They've done everything in alternative rock music under the sun together. They've reinvented the wheel every 5 years for 25 years. So like they can go on to other things. That's like a quarter of existence together.
The thing with The Moon-Shaped Pool too is half of the album were songs that they had made 20 years ago but never really did anything with, and just kind of updated them to make it work for the record. But you know, Tom has said this, Johnny said this, Ed says it, and it says in the interview too, where they would love to work, they want to reunite at some point, but they're all at peace if that doesn't happen. They don't want to go just for a payday. They just want all 5 of them to get together and convene and be like, hey, we want to do this again together, you know? That's why Tom and Johnny are doing their own solo projects, because they're like Damon, where they just keep creating. They just have so many ideas and so many other things where they just love to create. So Tom and Johnny are always going to be performing music. Ed had a solo record, which we both thought was very good. And he even says it so in the interview too, where he goes, you know, we all want to make our own different things. Phil's coming out with a record this year too, and with that, like they should all be able and willing to do their own stuff as well. And then maybe or maybe not, they'll reconvene. It will hopefully happen, and it seems like it will likely happen at some point, but it also may not. Like it's just that possibility of it. But they're never going to do it just for shits and giggles. Like they will do it because they want to create something together. And that's a good way to do it. You don't want to only just do it for money, or only do it just because you want to do it. They want to do it because they have a purpose for it. Like they want to create something else, which I think is a good way to do it. And I've been at peace for it too, in that way too, because, you know, they're still making it, and it's nice to hear them be happy doing their own solo things. And those solo things would never work in a Radiohead context. So with that, it's like I'm fine either way.
It's very weird because there's like Radiohead is like a band you introduced me to, and like became like one of my favorite bands through that. And yeah, we've both kind of like made peace with like, oh, we have A Moon-Shaped Pool, and like we have the entire vast Radiohead discography and a bunch of different like hidden songs you can discover that were released in one-offs in different countries here or there. There's like a vast like network, and again, the cinematic universe with solo projects and collaborative projects like Atoms for Peace. There's so much to dig into that I don't feel like it's a situation where it's like the White Stripes, where like you just have this one album and it's like that's all you got to live with. That's pretty much like all you can work with. And I'm not going to get into the Jack White cinematic universe because we could do an entire podcast. We could just do an entire podcast devote to only reviewing Jack White albums every single week, and we'd still be able to do a weekly podcast. But I do want to get into a little bit of drama from the podcast interview that Ed O'Brien did. So I don't know if you caught this near the end of the article, but so yeah, you said Ed O'Brien has solo work, Philip Selway's doing solo work, Tom and Johnny are currently preoccupied with The Smile, and initially Ed O'Brien had some reservations about it, and a lot of the Radiohead members had some reservation about it because they said, and I'm quoting Ed O'Brien here, quote, "What's slightly weird at first is when two members hook up and you go, oh, and it's the same management and stuff like that. But you get to the stage where you're happy that your brothers want to make music." And he added, end quote, and he's adding that The Smile sounded fantastic. And I think that's very interesting because on the one hand, Radiohead are not very public about, they seem just like anything really. They seem to get along as guys and they get to be able to do a musical business relationship pretty well, and they look like they're having fun on stage together. But I noted in the Smile review that a lot of The Smile sounds like Radiohead side missions, which you're going to get when 2/3 of The Smile is 2/5 of Radiohead. Like that's you're going to get that
and
cross pollination.
And the main contributors too of it,
Yeah, you're going to get that cross pollination, but it's still different in its own thing, and you get certain ideas that would sound a little bit off for Radiohead, or be like a step backwards. Whereas the Radiohead project has 100%. Always been about like, not to sound communist, but like great leaps forward. So, I think that's really interesting. I do love that kind of drama. It's like, oh, you're doing this thing now, but I do think that there's no like actual bad blood between them, at least like what has
not
been,
at all
portrayed out into the public. And yeah, my last question was going to be what you already answered, which is how you're processing it. But we've talked about this a long time, many times, that like we've
to me, after Moonshaped Pool, I was like, this will probably, I wouldn't be surprised if this is the last record, and that's why I wanted to see him live so bad, because I was going to in 2012, but it didn't work out, and then wanted to in 2016, it didn't work out, and then 17, we both went to the Berkeley show, and it was incredible. So that's like, okay, I have my piece with it. I would love for them to do more work, but at the same time, it's whatever they want to do. Yeah. I'm not going to be one of those where like you have to keep creating. I'm like, no, it's the only time you should create is when you want to create or you have something in order to do it. That's why I perfectly fine with artists taking their sweet ass time between music. Yeah. And if you have Writer's block or anything, I mean, look at Kendrick. It took him 5 years to make Mr. Morale, and it's incredible. So you get little things like that, and
it's difficult to have a musical partnership, or like any kind of partnership, that long, and not have some like things to work through. Like the Damon Albarn Jamie Hewlett relationship is very storied. Even right now,
free
like
Jamie.
Free Jamie Hewlett, but like that's a comparison. Like Damon Albarn still looks like a like from the year 2000 to the year 2022, Damon Albarn performing live Gorillaz he still looks like the happy kid locked in a toy store with all of his like favorite friends, many of whom are black. He's like, basically he still has that like charisma he had 20 years ago, 30 years ago from music that's still bringing him, and you're seeing that in the results. Jamie Hewlett is oftentimes locked in a box somewhere, but the Gorillaz art is just getting next level and increasingly evolved and increasingly better. And so I feel like Jamie's getting a lot of creative juices flowing from that as well. What I'm saying is creative endeavors should be fulfilling, more or less, as you go on and as time progresses. And that just goes to show it. I think Radiohead's a great example of this. And I love the like flashy headlines and titles. We'll be able to get all this stuff like, oh no, Radiohead breaking up. Because the official Daft Punk breakup, like that was a day. That was a hard day. But I think I could definitely see
that one was there's two moments on this podcast where it just hit differently. Doom dying and Daft Punk saying no more. It's like,
well, there are three moments of this podcast that hit differently, but you hit the first two main ones, and we can end the podcast now.
I'll talk about Fight Club.